All right. Today we're diving into a really fundamental idea in economics. It's called the benefit principle.
Okay, so think about this for a second. How do we actually pay for all the stuff we share? Things like parks, roads, streetlights. We all use them, but not in the same way, right? So who should foot the bill? And how much should they pay? It's actually a much deeper question than you might think. So what if we treated government services kind of like a subscription? Like if you're a huge fan of the local library, you chip in a bit more. But if you never set foot in there, well, you'd pay less. It's a pretty simple idea, really, and it's at the core of a major theory in public economics. So here's the official definition. The benefit principle basically says that people should be taxed based on how much they benefit from government services. In other words, the fairest way to fund things is to treat the government almost like a store. The more you get, the more you pay. And, this whole idea seems to check two really important boxes when we talk about fairness. First, there's what's called horizontal equity. That just means if you and your neighbor get the same benefits, you should pay the same tax. Makes sense. Then there's vertical equity. If someone gets more benefits than you do, well, they should pay more. On the face of it, it sounds totally, perfectly fair. All right, to really get a feel for how this works in practice, let's build a super simple economic model. We're going to create a little world with just two people and see how this whole benefit principle thing plays out. Okay, so here are the rules of our little economy. Rule 1, there are only two people, we'll call them A and B. Rule 2, they've got fixed resources they can use for either private stuff or public goods. And here's the most important part. Rule 3, a person's demand for a public good, that's how we measure how much they benefit from it. Simple enough, right? So let's say our town wants to build a new park. Our first person, person A, thinks the park would be, nice. Maybe they'd walk their dog there on a Sunday. They have some demand for it, but it's not exactly a game changer for them. But then you've got person B. Now, person B absolutely loves the idea of a park. They're dreaming of picnics, morning jogs, reading under a tree. They'd be there every single day. So their demand and the benefit they'd get is way, way higher than A's. Okay, so how do we figure out the total value of this park to our little society? Well, we don't just find the average. We actually add their desires together. We take person A's kind of meh interest and we add it to person B's huge enthusiasm. That gives us the total demand. But of course, this park isn't going to build itself. It costs money, right? You've got to buy the land, pay for construction, keep it maintained. In econ speak, this is the supply side of the whole thing. So the real goal here is to find what economists call equilibrium. You can think of it as the perfect sweet spot. It's the point where the park is exactly the right size, where the total benefit to A and B perfectly matches what it costs to provide it. If it were any bigger or any smaller, it'd just be inefficient. Okay, so we figured out the perfect size for our park, but that still leaves us with the big question we started with. Who's going to pay for it? So under the benefit principle, it's pretty straightforward. Person A, they pay a smaller share. Why? Because they get a smaller benefit. Their tax price is directly tied to the value they get. They contribute exactly in proportion to what it's worth to them, and not a cent more. And on the flip side, person B, our park lover, pays a much bigger chunk of the cost. They get way more joy out of it, so they contribute more. See how that works? The system perfectly customizes the tax for each person based on their individual benefit. I mean, it sounds like the perfect solution, doesn't it? Yeah, it seems so elegant, so fair. You pay for what you get. Simple. So why don't we do this for every tax? Well, the problem is, as soon as we step out of our neat little two-person model and into the messy real world, some pretty big problems start to pop up. Yeah, it turns out that this beautiful, elegant theory, well, it has some pretty serious cracks in its foundation when you actually try to build a society on top of it.
You really run into three massive problems. First, there's a philosophical question. Should the government really operate like a business, charging for every little thing? Second, you've got a huge equity problem. Think about it. A low-income community might benefit the most from, say, a public health clinic, but they're the ones who can least afford to pay more tax for it. And finally, and this is a big one, you've got the free rider problem. If your tax bill is based on how much you say you want something, well, what's everyone going to do? They're gonna lie. They'll pretend they don't care about it to get a lower bill. And that makes it basically impossible to know what services people actually value. So, if it's so full of holes in the real world, why do we even bother talking about it? What's the big takeaway?
Well, the real takeaway is this. The benefit principle might be impractical as a one-size-fits-all rule, but it's an incredibly important idea. It's like a benchmark. It forces us to think really hard about the trade-offs between a pay-for-what-you-get system and other important values like social equity and just being able to afford to pay. It really helps sharpen our ideas about what fair actually means when we talk about taxes.
And that, of course, leaves us with the ultimate question. If paying by benefit has all these flaws, but paying based on ability also has its own set of challenges, what is the fairest way to fund this whole society we all share? That's a big one to chew on. Thanks for joining me for this explainer.